We're going to be talking about security policy as code. I was just going to call it policy as code, but we're specifically focusing on security, cybersecurity, cloud security, things like that. I have way too many slides about myself, but I am Pittsburgh. I have a consulting company that does cloud native security and compliance, teach classes. That's why I'm here. So big thank you to Sands for sponsoring my flight out here, first class. Woohoo. CNCF ambassador, right? I'm a big fan of them. I also work in the Apache Software Foundation, some minor work in the OpenSSL, and I have some of my open source projects that are mine. Community builder, you can see my stickers. That's Pittsburgh, so I run our local B-sides. Well, not only me, right? We have a group of 8 people, but I'm one of the 3 primary ones. I do a security meetup, PitSec workspace, and this. So no logo yet. Eventually, I will have a logo for this. If anyone has skills with like even how to direct a designer, I would definitely appreciate that because I'm like, I don't know, make it look good. That's not very helpful. Yeah. Yeah. I tried Dolly, and I used all my credits and I didn't get anywhere useful. So I was like, I don't know, a ship in the cloud. I tried to key off of some of the Trash Panda stuff that didn't work for well for me. So you did a better job than I did. But yeah, that's just a URL shortener. You don't have to use it. You can just Google it or something. So why are we talking about what we're talking about? Well, we have companies, probably. Either we have companies that we secure other people's companies as engineers and consultants, executives, auditors, clients. They ask questions, right? They want to know about our security controls. They'd like to use our services. They'd like to sell their company and they want to be prepared for due diligence. In order to provide that assurance, we need evidence, right? It's difficult to scale, very hard to put together. I've recently been talking to some companies that said they have a 7-person team who primarily takes screenshots for a living. I was like, what? They said, "Bam." And I said, what? Screenshots. Like, okay, let's fix this problem, right? Also, people hate this work, right? Most people don't enjoy this sorts of activities, high toil, unrewarding activities. And I think I've got something in the way here. Humans make mistakes. I think that'll be a good spot for it. So that's what we're talking about. Also, to some degree, give me some feedback because I don't know this audience. I'm not from here, obviously. So you're like, duh. You're welcome to tell me that. So I'm going to be primarily leveraging other resources, some prior work that I've done. You want to pick a baseline. Where do you start? So this was one of the things that Andy had mentioned. So on the CNCF blog, we have the Cloud Native Security Controls Catalog. This was an initiative that I led in tag security. And the idea was that we have numerous white papers that were coming out of tag security, and there were lots of word, and companies started asking the question, that's great. How do I know if I'm doing what's in the white paper? White paper's long and detailed, lots of explanation words. Can you boil it down to like a list of things to do, like duties? Can I say I'm 50% compliant or I'm following 50% of the recommendations from those white papers, right? And I think these links still work. Yep. So we've got, this is V1 of the Cloud Native Security White Paper, which was alluded to earlier. There's a whole bunch of interesting content in the index. This is just cloud native security. We also have the software supply chain best practices focused on security, and there are new papers coming out, right? There's version 2 of the cloud native security white paper, which we're going to be updating to and zero trust. There was also a serverless paper, which I believe is going to get folded into cloud native security white paper V3. So with this controls catalog initiative, we are boiling that down to, unfortunately for MVP, a spreadsheet, right? Not a huge fan, but we've distilled the information, put some basic schema around it. So we've got about 200, just under 200 bullet points. We're really seeing here on the control title, and we've mapped it back to different sections in originating documents. So companies can say, how can I help with this? And one example I can talk about is 3M. So they said, I want to see if I'm following the supply chain security best practices. They used the white paper and they found it a little bit difficult. They made a version of this very similar. We ended up merging our projects together. So that was kind of useful. We also mapped out some risk categories, assurance levels, and a best effort. You'll notice there are some empty spots, especially closer to the top. Nope, actually, we did a pretty decent job. Better than I remember, of mapping things to 853 R5. There's a little white space, right? So imperfect, but something. We had all kinds of great conversations with the Center for Internet Security and other orgs about how do you actually map across frameworks. Nobody agrees. hard problem. Someone's going to solve that. Probably not going to be me, right? Think Center for Internet Security really wants that, but also the Cloud Security Alliance is heavily interested in focusing on that problem. We could treat everything like a set. We could do composition. There's lots of ways to skin that cat, but let's close all of those out. So if you're interested, there's a blog from about a year ago that says how you might be able to use this. Gotten okay feedback so far, not great about it. You know, a very kind of limited number of organizations have let us know that they've used it, and I'm interested in more of those. And one of my goals is to migrate the format to something a little bit more programmatically useful. And that, if you're familiar, would be OSCOW. So we'll talk about OSCOW in a little bit. All right, so let's do a quick demo. This might feel like a little bit of a hodgepodge. I apologize in advance, but let's do a demo of something policy as code related. Let's see, which is the first one? Attestation, I think. All right. So we are building a project. We would like to uh, create this, publish it, and we'd like to identify as maybe a user of this project if it's okay or not. How do we know if it's okay, if our policy at our company says it's okay to use this project? So it's a fairly simple Ubuntu. Oh, it's cut off, isn't it? Um, Not losing a ton there, but I have fixed width, so we're gonna just lose a little bit on the left. Well, Docker Ubuntu 2204 does some really important things. We want to use this project. Someone on the internet made it. So we are creating an image and we're going to build it. And we're going to create during the build process a Salsa province document, right? So that is going to use Salsa 0.2. If you're following the Salsa project, you know that there's also a version 1.0 that's out. But this is kind of my easy button, a couple arguments to a Docker build X build. No big deal. All right, so I built this. I've built it multiple times, so it's cached. I was trying to speed things up today. Awesome. So I've built and pushed this. I believe it just went out on Docker Hub somewhere. That's confirmed that it does. We'll do a quick run. Oh, there we go. It works. So that's what this project does. It honks at us with a rainbow cow because that's I don't know, that's my style, I guess. But this is a thing that we would like to consider using in our organization. How do we use the information that has been provided so far in order to do that? So let's take a look at that image and we're going to extract the provenance from it and we can jump around, right? So here is the provenance information that was created and stored. We can see things regarding how it was created and when it was created, right? Also 0.2 specification, which there were some changes, but we've got a variety of different bits of context here, right? Nothing specifically to read. And this is a pretty straightforward process. And um, image, but we have some evidence. We can see what version control, what hash of what source it came from, things like that. Okay, great. So we have this also provenance. It's published on Docker Hub. I ran a simple command and I was able to pull it down. Great. As the package maintainer, I may also want to assign it. We're going to use a project called cosign that's under the Project Sig store in the CNCF. You can see here, I just made a quick password and a key pair locally, a public and private key, and I'm going to use that to sign this image. And that signature appears to have been successful. Yes. So I just pushed a signature out to index.docker.io. And I think if that worked right, we'll go to hub.docker.com/r/Jon Zeolla provenance tags. And yes, so we can say a few seconds ago, we just pushed this additional OCI artifact to the Docker Hub registry, and it contains information for signing the other image, right? You can see that, well, you can't see super well in this interface, but this hash maps us to this image. That's what we're doing there, right? Wrong way. Right. So far we have a Salsa 0.2 provenance for our honking cow, rainbow honking cow, actually. And we've pushed that up as well as a signature. And if you look, we've added a couple of other bits of information to that signature. We have tag equals latest and approval equals Jon Zeolla. So I'm saying that I approve this image. This is something obviously you could do internally to an organization as well as externally. We'll talk about an external organization doing work like this right now in a minute. So I want to make sure that that signature is valid. I run cosign verify. It works. There's a bunch of stuff here, but this bottom block is what goes to standard out. So if you pipe this through or something like that, that's what you're actually going to get. The other information goes to standard error, so it doesn't pass the pipe unless you redirect. You can see at the end here, we have approval from Jon Zeolla, whatever that means to us. That's in this cryptographically and high integrity location. So now we're going to check the approval. We say we only want to use images that have been reviewed and approved by Jon Zeolla. Maybe this is reviewed and approved by the Alpha Omega project. Just as an example, we're okay with Jon Zeolla approving this. So I did a cosign verify and I pretty much extracted the approval from the end. And we have a quick policy as code check, right? If the approval is Jon Zeolla, then it's approved. Otherwise, don't use. It's just like super, super, super naive policy, right? High level proof of concept. All right. So that's that. So pretty easy to get started with this sort of thing. And how do we take this to the next level? So there is anyone, oh yeah, is anyone familiar with Alpha Omega, the OpenSF project? Okay, yeah, a little bit. Cool. So in the Alpha Omega project, they have this thing called the OAF, the Omega Assertion Framework. I refreshed myself on this last night, but previously I'd been following a couple of different issues and regarding this, lost track of it for a little bit, but it seems like they've still been hard at work, right? So the Alpha Omega project is, I think, directly funded by some large organizations. I may get these wrong, but I believe Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and some others. I know at least Microsoft employees are working on the project as a lead. And they have this Omega assertion framework. So what does this mean? That means that they took what I just showed in a demo and blew it up, 1,000 times. They are doing fairly dedicated assessments of open source tools and projects and ecosystems. And their goal is to use the Omega assertion framework as a way to publish attestations that they have performed a security review, partially automated and partially manual, of these different projects and ecosystems. So now, as companies that want to consume those projects, we can have an explicit trust by saying we will trust projects that have been assessed by Alpha Omega, and the findings are some sort of threshold, right? Moving towards zero trust, which I say many times is not really zero trust, it's zero implicit trust, right? So we are saying we can explicitly trust things because it's been signed and reviewed by company X, Y, and Z. So this project is worth keeping an eye on. There are lots of different um, organizations kind of getting involved here. If anybody the Intoto project, there's some references in here to potentially re-evaluating the way that they're signing. Yep, here, right here, and potentially moving with forward with Intoto attestations or something else. And all of that is kind of in flux right now. But my goal with this talk is not to exhaustively cover anything, but just to give a little bit of a survey. Cool. So that's the Omega assertion framework. Now I'm going to just iteratively iframe a bunch of different websites that I think are doing some cool work. All right. So we'll start with the Open Policy Agent project. So this was mentioned in the last talk, as is the next couple of slides. And so in the OPA project, they have open source projects like Gatekeeper and Conftest and others, and are supporting this Rego language as a way to enforce policy as code to say, if you are deploying something into a Kubernetes cluster, you may want to ensure through an admission hook validation that it conforms in some way. Maybe that it has a cosign signature. Maybe that it's been approved. So you can put that, enforce that via Gatekeeper and setting up admission hooks to ensure that Jon Zeolla has approved your thing or Alpha Omega has approved your thing. Now, if you don't want a project outside of your Kubernetes cluster doing this sort of validation, we now have the common expression language and beta and the latest version of the beta's release of Kubernetes. And I was reminded, actually, I still have to open a PR for this. I believe the documentation is out of date where no longer beta features are enabled by default. I believe that's true. Is that true? Does anyone know for sure? I found a PR saying that that is now the case, even though the documentation says beta features in Kubernetes are on by default. Newer PR said, no, they're off by default now. So until I get someone to 100% validate, I don't know what the current state is, but I was going to open a PR to the docs and see if it get declined, if it's wrong. Just put it at the wall, see what sticks. So, but anyways, what's cool about Cell is that you're now able to run parts of this inside your cluster. You no longer have dependencies outside your cluster, so additional latency or potential downtime, trying to figure out if you need to fail open or fail closed or things along those lines. So if you're interested in this, very new, still beta, possible to do with some new custom objects. We've also got Kyverno. I think Kyverno is a very popular project. A lot of people like that is specifically focused on Kubernetes. I personally think of it as similar to the OPA Gatekeeper project, but with a less broad language and a more focused language specifically on the Kubernetes ecosystem. I do a little bit of work in the policy working group, and in there I get to work with Jim Bagwadi a little bit, who's one of the primary maintainers of Everno. Same sort of concept there, right? How can we ensure that things that are going into our clusters are allowed? They've been signed, they've been approved, they've been reviewed. All right, another project, Guac. I have no idea what this stands for. I'm pretty sure, actually, I know for a fact it's a backronym just to play off of salsa, right? So in the Guac project, the goal is to understand software supply chain better. Initially started with a proof of concept for Neo4j again, but has been evolving. They've got an in-memory database now, and they're working on some additional new backend support. Lots of really cool innovation is going on here. The idea is we have all of these new supply chain artifacts because SolarWinds, et cetera, et cetera. Where do we put them? How do we shove them in a giant graph and ask questions of them? I especially like it's funny because I've kind of latched onto this, and it seems like the Guac developers don't really care about this thing that they created, but I like is the idea of chips. So we've got these chips in Guac, and those would be like the clients that interact with the Guac graph. They seem to have used that term like 2 times and never since, but I'm going to keep saying it until they tell me to stop. Um, Anyways, a lot of the people at Casar, at Google, and some other organizations are investing a lot in here. So if you know, like Michael Lieberman or um, Brandon Lum or those people, um, I won't try to name them all because then I definitely will miss some and then I'll feel bad. But they're working fairly intently on this, seeing a lot of development. There's a UI now that is seeing some iteration. It actually has a dark mode, so like, woo, this is great. We've got progress. The dark mode, you can read things on. That's second level. We're making progress here. And there was an official beta release, which is pretty awesome. This, I have to say, I was pretty impressed with the velocity of this project. And it is, I believe, still in the process of being moved under the OpenSSF. It's kind of wandering a little bit right now, and but with the plan to get it in there as long as we can, they can wrap a few things up. So if you're interested in that, you can go to their docs. They've got a nice, quick Docker Compose get started, and extremely easy to work in. Also, what's been interesting about this is finding bugs in upstream projects that create supply chain artifacts, not actually meeting the specifications when we try to analyze them more deeply. And a lot of respect for this project. They've been doing a lot of great work with the engineering and progress. Another project. So this is I believe, an IBM sponsored project or an IBM project, one of the two, called Compliance Trestle. This is a Python-based project for simplifying the interactions with OSCAL, the Open Security Controls Assessment language, which is a schema for us to exchange information about security activities that have occurred in our environment. It's sponsored by NIST, and it's very focused on FedRAMP, as you maybe expect, but they claim to have supported ISO 27001, and I forget some GRC framework as well. But it's very controls oriented, not risk based or risk oriented, although they say that it can support that as well. The Trestle project is just a tool which simplifies the interaction with it. And this is probably what I'll be using to move from what you saw in that Google worksheet to OSCAL. They've got some nice standard Python objects where I can load something in as a CSV, populate an object, and then write file. So if you have to manage super large SSPs or related documents for compliance, this is one of a suite of tools to help do that. I like it because it's fully open source. This does not look super well with the dark background, but I can do that. So that's the best that, sorry, the best that I could do. So ConfTest, so this also comes from the OPA project, but is focused on like configuration files. And so I particularly like it because I like to use Rego, and I do a lot of work in pipelines. So pipelines, config files, ConfTest. If you want to enforce policy as code, that's not working. On config files, you can support YAML and Docker files and things like that here, and more. These are not iframed because they have content security policies that prevent me from doing so. So kind of kudos to them, but also that's kind of a little frustrating. Lula didn't have a choice in the matter because it was GitHub's fault. GitHub.com does not allow you to iframe them. Okay, oh well. But Lula is from the Defense Unicorns, and an online contributor that I've worked with in the past. Brant Keller is the primary developer and author of this tool. And it's kind of a proof of concept. We'll see where it goes. He's just getting back from maternity leave, so we'll figure out how much effort he's going to be able to put into this. But he did a Kyverno based, Kyverno and Istio, I believe, integration where you could say if you have a service mesh set up, you're good. If not, you're not good, sort of evaluation by hooking into Kyverno. And then I also mentioned in Toto, so this has some tooling around it for creating provenance and then also specifications for attestations. It feels a little academic to me right now, but it is definitely implemented and being used in other projects, especially being referenced in the Alpha Omega OAF project, potentially get more use there. So this talk was meant to be just a little bit of fire hose or like a smattering of different things. So hopefully that was a little bit of value. I'm going to wrap things up with another very brief demo on paved roads. So at least in my experience, lots of people say this word paved road and it's a little ambiguous. There's not some great examples publicly. So at my company, we have a paved road for doing Python in Docker containers. That's a very common thing that we end up doing. I made a paved road for us and I decided to open source that lately. So we'll just do a quick demo to see what that means. That's the wrong direction. All right. So in order to kick things off, you just do a pipx run. This is using a project called Cookie Cutter. Again, we do a lot of Python work. So Cookie Cutter is a Python project. It's kind of active, might be getting replaced by Cookie Ninja. We'll see what happens there. So you run this command, and then it's going to give us something like 10 questions. You have to name it, pick a slug, a short description. We could say, this is an example. Oh, wow. This is hard to type like this. Maybe if I do this, Ample Cloud Native Security, Pittsburgh. I don't know if that'll work, but I'll try it. It's the project owner, so it'll make a code owners by default, who is going to be the owner of this project, so that from the beginning you have peer review of everything and the correct person's approving it. Bunch of deep Python version, the newest one. Ubuntu, not the newest one because 2204 doesn't work with us yet. Docker Hub, let's say no. We're going to use Calver, which will release every single commit with calendar-based versioning because I'm super aggressive with regard to releasing. Just release all the time and test everything all the time. And this will not be public by default, which means we're just going to have a regular copyright license instead of the other two that I like, which are MIT or BSD3 clause. Also a fan of Apache too. So right now it's doing a bunch of stuff. It has rendered a bunch of Jinja templates, made files based on those Jinja templates, and we're going to see what this project can do once it's rendered. It's got a bunch of post-generation hooks to make a Git repo and things like that. And so that's why it takes a couple of seconds. We'll see how long. I should get a T-log entry because I use Git sign. And so I'll get a little like entry in there. That's another project sig store tool. And it'll probably pop up like, you've authenticated, you've signed your thing. And that's another way where we can get signatures from the beginning of generating this project. But here we go. There's our T-log entry. So we signed it, we pushed that up to Recore, and it's got a Git sign signature on it from the beginning. And if you go over here, you'll see six-store authentication successful. I wish that this thing didn't pop up every time I commit something. It is like the most annoying. Like this is what we have. That's why you stopped using it. Yeah, super annoying. Yeah, yeah. Right, exactly. So, all right. So we've got a repo now. It's told to do because that was the default, and we're gonna init that repo. We use task files. I heard some opinions lately on the internet that make files are the best thing in the world. I don't know if anyone follows Dan Lawrence, but and absolutely not a fan. I will just quickly github.com, Jon Zeolla. Today I learned. So this is my world repo that I don't really use anymore. But this is why I don't like makefile. Good luck trying to run Docker run commands with variables inside of a makefile. You need to do \$ curly bracket variable curly bracket. But it's a backtick if it's a command in a container on your host. Like I'm done. I'm out of here. Peace out. So we'll go over here. Oh, we make the task files. Task files are a Go-based project that configure your project in YAML. It's still imperfect. Passing variables around is a little messy, but it's all right. So I knitted it. That does a variety of different things, including some pre-commit hooks with our policy as code enforcer. When you start, you can grep for not implemented error. That's in the instructions. That's where you put your business logic. So it's like start there. Like where that is, put like an entry point to your business logic. I don't know. We can run linting. We've got our custom built linter, which runs all of those linters in parallel. And usually it takes about 2 seconds. I'm not sure why it's taking so long right now because I'm being recorded. Um, this is strange. Interesting. Why do I have so many containers running too? Oh no, that's fine. Okay, it worked. Oh, it found errors. That's interesting. Um, my exclusion. Oh, yeah, that looks like a problem. I blame our internet. That's why it took so long. Econ reset. All right. So we got an issue because the internet broke. Try not to have the internet break when you're rendering it. This is what the project looks like, excluding some boilerplate things. It's pretty standard stuff. Like git ignore, Docker file. Um, it's got workflows built into it by default. So when you commit, it's going to release every single commit. When you do a PR, it's going to run your tests, standard stuff. It's got security checking, which is workflow dispatch. That's hard to see up there, but that means you press the button, it does your security scans. And we've got automated updates, which run on a cron, which is randomly generated. So it automatically opens a PR against my repo every Monday and Thursdays. And I just accept that if I want to update all the dependencies of my project because I hate maintenance and that feels like toil to me. All that stuff's in there already by default. It has multi-platform Docker builds as well. So you do platform equals all. And you can see I'm building an ARM 64, which is what I'm actually running, and an AMD 64, which will take forever to do if I let this thing finish. So I'm just going to wait until the ARM 64 image finishes building. And then we're going to control C this sucker. Should take like 25 seconds. I should have like prepared some jokes or something to put in at this point. Like this is a great, like, I don't know, awkwardly stand in front of the group. Yeah, there we go. Okay, it's done. So yeah, we're gonna control C the AMD 64 one. It has built in by default 100% test coverage. That's not actually that useful because there's no business logic, but at least you got the right spot and some examples on how to run the tests. That's built into it too. It's got SBOMs. It creates Cyclone DX, SPDX, and SIFT SBOM, so pretty standard like SIFT install sort of thing. And then it does vulnerability scans with pipe, and all of that goes into your pipeline. If you're doing this in a pipeline, it gets uploaded to each release, all that sort of basic stuff. So we are gonna export that on disk. We're gonna find a couple findings. There we go. No criticals, two highs. It generates a new block file from scratch with the latest versions on generation of the project. And you saw that the test passed, so it's good. But maybe we've got some work to do on the vulnerabilities. Is that everything? Oh, yeah, well, there's the S-bombs and the vulnerability scans. They do exist. It'd be cool if we could like shovel them over into Guac automatically, but it doesn't do that today. Anyways, the point of that was example, if anyone's not familiar with paved road, just some sort of baseline features that people may want. And if you want to enforce policy as code in your pipelines and things like that, you make it easy like that to get started and then put it in the pipelines from there. So you've got it from the beginning. All right. Questions?
Policy agent. So you can style off like those kind of a block like one is there.
Mhm.
If you have a problem section, so that's what restricted case was. It's a board and actually to look like what. Just again, I have to call clear system and then to
Oh, you're saying the concern is that it's slow? Yeah. It's slow if you're doing like an admission webhook, like validation webhook. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. It absolutely will. Yeah. Well, oh, just faster than on the network. Well, there's getting rid of the network entirely with Cell, right? So that's what I was showing earlier. This one. So now it's built into the cluster. So Cell is actually inside of the cluster, so it doesn't have to go out, and you don't have the external dependency as well. Now this is fairly limited. So then there was a decent talk at KubeCon last year. If you want to kind of get ramped up on the features, but
that I think deploy directly into it. Like no requirement like I mean like post it in a separate system or cloud system and then it'll pull it down and whenever it works deploy in like policy
what did you say F5? What did you go? Oh, okay.
go to the system to fetch the policy and
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
in-house agent. So the in-house agent you can deploy all stuff. In that case actually there's no one in the
Zero trust. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm not sure I have a great answer for you. To be honest, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to hear as well. So, I mean, you could still cryptographically verify the connection with that other system too. you could cryptographically verify it can be signed, you can have some sort of trust, ahead of time, yeah, publish a public key and use TLS to grab the public key and cache it and things like that. So it's kind of non-zero. Or also you could prime the pump, but you could just have something preloaded in there. I mean, there's always the trust on first use problem where you have to bootstrap yourself, right? But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Um, so are you doing a lot of work in like with zero trust, like moving to zero trust? Okay. Yeah. I've a little bit of work with zero trust, like specifically zero trust initiatives and kind of like carving out very specific areas of a project to improve. Have you looked at I mean coming from the US, I think this like guidance where they came out specific to the whatever they call it, the five pillars of zero trust and kind of ways to start approaching projects and then guidance for the US government on how to implement and things like that, which at least kind of starts to point in the right direction and kind of finds out projects and concepts and things like that. But I don't know if that's kind of gone in the direction that you're thinking. All right. Cool. Other questions? Thank you. Um, okay. No mystery guests today. I wasn't sure. Oh, actually, let me check over here. Uh, um, I missed the project name for SSP management earlier. Yes. So that is stressful compliance. Great. Any other questions from online? Or are we just going to keep enjoying the inception, especially with the 15-second delay? Sure. Yeah.
okay. So if they want so what's part of it, register,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's on it is thing let's sign.
Are you trying to bait me into like a notary versus hold on a second.
One provide
Mm, yeah, yeah.
that's
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like last week. Like, yeah, yeah. So just to reiterate for everyone online, there are competing specifications with pretty much everything right now. There's a lot of new, yeah, SBOMs is another one, CycloneDS, SPDX, and whatever. And then we're talking about Notary and Cosign as different competing, the two leading ones. But an organization may fall into a situation where, especially through acquisition or something like that, one part of the org or one organization might use one and another part of it might use another. Also, multiple clouds and things like that. How do you handle it? I have some, I don't know, maybe not super popular opinions on this, which is that I love automation and policy as code and things like that. But I think over standardizing is poison to compete and that we should not try to overly enforce one across the organization, but we should kind of ultimately out and let organizations do it and support multiple things. Realize that's a fairly unpopular opinion, but that's kind of the way that I feel right now, and I just sort of let all of them go. With the reason it needs to be functional, like it needs to be useful, and it needs to meet the objective requirements. Like, why are we finding this in the first place? Can it achieve whatever that objective?
so
Is? Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, super complicated question. Which was essentially, uh, there are some maybe vendors specific things that won't support open standards, like to do, mission control, yeah, or one or not the other. Like, trying to do admission control in ECS where like, okay, you could do something like that, but you'd have to set up an pitch or a task deployment, push it to a Lambda, check, do whatever you want to check, and then go kill the task. Totally an AWS thing. That's not going to, that's nothing like running or um, or anything like that. And so, yes, I don't know. I have a lot of unpopular opinions in this space, and I'm totally fine with just being locked in with. I think, it's possible that a locked-in vendor solution be better for the long term. I think that having open standards is extremely and I think that may the best man win. So if I think the open standard should, uh, see sufficient investment from enough separate companies that they could probably buy something more valuable than a locked-in version of a similar feature do, and then it will win, and maybe we'll still be in a place where that vendor isn't gonna budge. Oh, well, I mean, I've got 3 S-bombs right there. Um, uh, um, I don't have a strong opinion on that one. So the question is kind of for open projects that are distributing things to consumers, should they follow all of the standards because any customer can use any of this they want? You know, again, within reason, like some basic standard or some dying standard we don't really need to focus much on. I don't have a strong opinion on that one. I kind of just do a best like, it's super easy. Like, I just changed a couple arguments and I did some more S-bomb. Like, I don't think I'm killing anybody by storing those and, get them there pipeline, and if they're like a couple meg ever, and I hire them after 90 days or just the project doesn't mean anything, doesn't do anything right here, it's like a no-op. So, this project isn't meaningful. So, yeah, I don't have a super strong I mean, anyone else have a strong opinion? I don't know. I do have strong opinions on the first 2, but the last one, yeah, not as much. Like, should they support all the standards? They should support whatever standards they want to. I don't think unless they're getting compensated or, somehow incentives to follow what consumers want, maybe they're not even right? They can do whatever they want. It's up to them. It's their project, not our project, right? You're supposed to sign 3 times? Wait, why 3 times? What's the 3rd? Oh, yeah, okay, Google Cloud Boundary, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, what I like about that solution is make it really easy to do, then sure, people should start using it, right? It's really like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it worth the effort? Well, you make tools that make it easy to do these, like, of an action or one tool, many things. I mean, that's right? Like, it's just like, boom, 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 drop some things out, and great. Well, I use this now. I could use other to do it, but yeah. Cool. Alright, good there. So, I think we're gonna wrap it up for the night then. Thanks everyone for coming to the do you wanna say anything or thank you. Did it. Alright, everybody. See you later.